Today we have another easy question to solve together. So, who should insure against liability? So we can do this exercise with us and we can discuss because, of course, I do not have the answer here, but just to try to find several solutions together. So just to give you an idea of the characteristics of this market very quickly. We have private and social insurance for liability. And of course, when we talk about the insurance in our field, we have to concentrate our attention on the private sector, generally characterized by it's founded on voluntary basis. Most of the insurers are on that sector. And we have, of course, this regards private or social insurance. And the private insurance are governed by the principle established between the parties involved. And part of them are, in our field, are mandatory, but just a few, let me say, because we have the aircraft hull coverage or aviation products liability, cargo, crew, personal accident cover, and so on. But we have a mandatory insurance in the aviation liability in order to cover the liability of the air carrier and aircraft operator. And this is just the only field where we can find a compulsory insurance. Indeed, we have also the insurance for manufacturers, but the different regulation for this sector in the European Union doesn't permit an harmonization of the policy covers in this field. So, coming back to the mandatory insurance, we started with this type of insurance quite recently, in 2004. Indeed, the European Union decided to introduce this type of insurance, establish a minimum level of insurance for the air carriers operators and for aircraft operators and air carriers, indeed. And in order to cover the liability of these people also for third parties on the surface for this kind of risks like terrorism, hijackings, and so on. And in order to be sure that these operators will apply this type of insurance, the European Union introduced a system of sanctions. And indeed, the air carrier can lose the operating license if he doesn't stipulate a contract of insurance and he doesn't have with him the certificate of insurance on board of the aircraft. And also the Civil Aviation Authority in Europe can refuse the right to land in the territory of the European Union to non-EU air carriers if they don't have an adequate certificate of insurance. So we can see that in that case, the European Union thought to introduce a very strong system of insurance to be sure that they cover their liability. Another example, established quite recently in 2009, indeed, when at international level, they decided to amend the Rome Convention for the damage on the surface. In that case, again, in order to protect the third party, the new convention, which is not yet in force, introduced a system of compulsory insurance and the strict liability regime for the liable party up to the limit established in relation to the aircraft maximum mass. And it's curious to see that these limits are the same provided in Europe by the Regulation 785 for compulsory insurance in Europe. But we do not have a similar provision in Europe for other operators, which will be and are still involved, or already involved in the single European sky, for example, ANSP. Of course, the first SES package introduced between the requirements requested in order to obtain the certification from the national authorities of the member states. They have to ensure their liability, but we do not have specific parameters or requirements for the level, the minimum of the insurance for these operators, and there are no sections if they don't stipulate it in any way. And what we can see is that existing insurance mostly cover responsibility, a professional responsibility risk related to their activities, but we do not have a specific mandatory insurance in order to protect victims apart from airlines and aircraft operators. And of course, insurance for accident such as the catastrophic accident mentioned before, is extremely different because of the high uncertainty of the risk at stake at the elevated losses involved. So you can tell us more on this field, of course. And in the absence of the one reason why we don't have a clear framework of insurance regulation for other operators is the reason why is maybe because we don't have a clear framework regulation on TPL. And it's possible to find solution in order to have also for other operators a system which introduces a minimum level of insurance in order to protect the third party in case of accidents. Maybe we have to see what happened in other fields. For example, at international level, where we have international conventions which regulate the third-party liability which arise for catastrophic events, for example, nuclear damages and so on. In this way, indeed, we have a system of compulsory insurance of the liable party up to the limit of the first year, with the direct claim, which is extremely important, the direct claim against the insurer. That is something which really protects, I think, the victims in a case of accident, and a supplementary compensation. Indeed, the aim of the compulsory insurance is to assure victims, indeed, in order to obtain the compensation, but also to avoid the risk of financial difficulties or bankruptcy of the liable party, certainly. And the direct claim, as I said before, against the insurance, it's extremely useful also in order to reduce the cost in order to recover it, the legal costs and so on, and also for rationalize all the claims and protect, in the end, victims. And as I said before, a supplementary compensation is another system in order to protect victims because the purpose of the supplementary compensation is to increase the amount of compensation available on the insurance market and to share the financial risk borne by private industry with public parties, if public parties are involved, of course, because the supplementary compensation, for example, established by the new Convention of Unlawful Interference, the supplement compensation will be created when the convention will enter in force by the passenger, for example, not for the public entities. But anyway, the role of the supplementary compensation in the supplementary compensation is envisaged in 3 cases: when the damages exceed the liable party liability, and when the liable party is not liable because the damage was, for example, a consequence of a force majeure, or when the liable party is incapable to reach their obligation and to pay the entire damage caused. So, again, all these international conventions, when they establish a compulsory insurance and supplementary compensation, they introduce also the right of recourse, especially in favor of the insurance against the real liable party. So, who will contribute to the supplementary compensation? As I said before, for example, in the Montreal Convention done in 2009, is established that the passenger will provide to this fund. For example, when we prepared the draft of the regulation for GNSS, we thought that for a catastrophic accident, which could happen for the use of the services from EGNOS and Galileo, the member state could contribute to the fund established by this draft of a European regulation, but it's just an idea, just a draft of regulation, or maybe public entities or the operators of the system, for example. They can contribute to the fund in order to recover every damage caused by the accident. So I hope to give you just a picture of ideas in order to answer the first question. Thank you.